How many more times do I have to say it? Anxiety is not a liar. It just gets shit wrong a lot. If a part of our own mind was actively lying to us, then that'd be a pretty disturbing concept to live with. And maybe this is one of the reasons why anxiety can seem so scary, because in some way we've been told it represents a part of ourselves trying to harm us. But the truth is a lot less dramatic. Anxiety isn't lying to you. There's no part of your mind trying to upset you. Anxiety just continually, with sometimes alarming regularity, gets things wrong. Bless it, it's trying to help, but it just has a funny way of showing it. By the way, if you're new to this channel, I'm Tim Box. I'm a mind coach and anxiety therapist, and for more than a decade now, I've been helping people take control of their anxiety response. In this video, I'm going to cover 5 weird ways anxiety gets things wrong and explain how, once we get rid of this idea that it's deliberately lying to us, we can actually use this information to calm a lot of that anxiety down. Okay, so first up, anxiety will often have us making worst-case scenario predictions. This is because anxiety is the emotion your mind uses to flag up whatever is deemed to be important, and keeping you safe is high on the list of priorities. This means that when we're in an anxious state, our mind will start to try and predict possible future challenges so that we can steer away from them, or at least be prepared for them. The problem? Most of the time, nothing catastrophic happens. In fact, about 99.99% recurring of the time, nothing much of interest happens at all. While it might feel like our life is a non-stop roller coaster, it only generally feels that way because we spend our time and energy imagining the possible disasters. These disasters hardly, if ever, actually happen. Think about how many times you've spent hours or even days worrying about something going horribly wrong, only to look back later and realize it wasn't even a big deal. So your mind isn't lying, it's just trying to cover the bases and keep you safe. That's healthy, natural, and in fact, that's pretty noble. Thank you, anxiety, but how about you calm down a bit? Turns out we're fine. Following on from that whole keeping us safe strategy that anxiety has our mind adopting, it's worth saying a few words about the fight or flight response. Now, fight or flight isn't an anxiety response, it's a fear response. If the thing that anxiety has us paying attention to as important seems to also contain some level of threat to us, then we might legitimately feel afraid. Now, unfortunately, whenever us human beings feel fear, we may very likely trigger the stress response, aka fight or flight. We'll fill with adrenaline, our heart will beat faster, and our muscles will tense up, preparing us to take physical action to save ourselves from whatever the threat might be. But the weird thing here is, of course, that very few of today's problems actually require a fight or flight response. When we feel under threat these days, it's because we need to send an email or pay a bill or have a difficult conversation. The fight or flight response can feel highly inappropriate for something that's best approached with a calm body and a clear mind. But again, this isn't your mind trying to mess you up. It's just your brain doing what billions of years of evolution dictate. Life's challenges these days might not be about outrunning a tiger or fighting off an attacker, but our mind can still default to this primal reaction at any sign of trouble. The issue's more about your mind making the mistake of thinking the situation poses a threat than the response itself. Helpfully, this is why we can change this response, even though it's such an ancient, hardwired one. We just need to understand that the current situation, whatever that might be, doesn't actually pose a threat to our safety or our happiness. Perhaps the greatest mistake your mind makes when under the influence of anxiety is this idea that you're not good enough or you can't cope. Anxiety has this nasty habit of tearing down our confidence. How many times have we found ourselves thinking, you can't do this or you'll fail, and attributed it to anxiety trying to destroy us or make life a misery? But the motivation behind these thoughts aren't malevolent at all. They're actually a part of our mind trying to protect us. Anxiety isn't taunting us with the thought that we can't cope. It's actually using that thought to shelter us and discourage us from making a bad choice. It's holding us back in case we bite off more than we can chew and stumble into a bad situation. And it's doing this because it thinks that playing it safe is the best way to protect us from disappointment or embarrassment. In these instances, our fear of negative consequences has us missing a very obvious truth. It turns out we can cope. Whatever that challenge might be, we'll most likely get the other side of it in some way. And how do we know this? Because we always do. Let me ask you this. How many times in your life have you faced a challenge and come out the other side? Even when it was tough, even when you doubted yourself, you made it. You always got through. Anxiety is simply that most fragile and vulnerable part of your mind expressing the misplaced belief you can't handle this. The good news is your track record proves otherwise, and you don't have to let those fears dictate your decisions. Imagine this. You are a trained chef running a high-quality restaurant, and someone with zero cooking experience comes into your kitchen telling you your recipe is all wrong. Would you change the way you cook based on their opinion? Of course not. You know your stuff, and the person criticizing you, by comparison, knows nothing. The idea that you'd let the neophyte dictate terms to the expert seems ridiculous. And yet there is one area of our life where we do that every day. We're constantly doing this when we place too much weight on what other people think of us. When someone judges us harshly or criticizes us, anxiety can have us believing we need to change or just hide away through fear that we'll be rejected. But here's the simple truth. They're not the expert on you. You are. If someone criticizes you, then you'll either agree or disagree. If you agree, then that's fine. It's nice when people agree. And if you already know what they've told you, then it doesn't need to impact on your self-image in any way. If you disagree with their critique, then guess who's wrong? The fact is that when we harbour a low self-image, it's almost always come from us accepting some level of criticism from others. In an attempt to protect us from exposing ourselves to more negative attention, we become anxious and protective of that perceived flaw. It's not your mind deliberately trying to make you feel bad, it's just anxiety mistakenly placing too much importance on the opinions of others. However, this is easily fixed. If someone judges you negatively, remember, it's their opinion, not the truth. And their lack of understanding makes their view entirely invalid. This last one is where our mind can really start to inadvertently play tricks on us. Let's take an example from the previous point I was making, where perhaps we've accepted the negative judgment of others as true. When we believe something negative about ourselves, like I'm not good enough or I can't cope, our brain actually starts looking for evidence to prove that belief. This is thanks to something called the reticular activating system. It's the part of your brain that filters your experiences, focusing your awareness towards some things and away from others. This basically means that if, for example, you think flying is dangerous, you're now going to notice any items on the news about planes. If you think a certain political point of view is valid over another, then you'll interpret news items through this filter. And if you've accepted the idea you're not good enough, then you will notice every time you seem to struggle and ignore all the times you achieved things. So if your overriding thought about yourself is, I'm not good enough, your reticular activating system will highlight every mistake or failure and completely ignore all the times you've been amazing. It's like having a biased judge in your head constantly ruling against you. The result, you end up with a negative bias that keeps reinforcing the same unhelpful beliefs. But again, this isn't anxiety lying about these things. It's your mind actively trying to maintain a consistent map of reality so that you can navigate it safely. The fact that map is wrong is what ultimately steers you so far off course. However, getting back on course is just a matter of recognizing these patterns and opening yourself up to the idea that your low self-image might not actually be an accurate representation of your true worth. Here's the bottom line. Anxiety isn't lying to you, but it is frequently getting things wrong. It predicts disaster when nothing's happening. It kicks you into fight or flight for problems that don't require it. It tears down your self-belief, takes the opinions of others far too seriously, and focuses on negatives while ignoring all the positives. But here's the good news. Once you recognize these patterns and you recognize the fact that these thoughts aren't true, you can stop them in their tracks. Remember, anxiety isn't the enemy. It's just a part of your mind that's doing its best, however clumsy that might at times seem. If you like the message in this video and have found this perspective helpful, then why not check out the members area where I dive deeper into topics like this and offer exclusive content, including my control system for retraining your mind, the full Clear Your Head Anxiety Relief Program, and weekly live Q&A sessions. hit the join button on my homepage or the link in the description below, and I'll see you there. I really hope you found this video valuable. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe for more help with anxiety-related issues. But that's all for now. I'm Tim Box. Always remember, be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.